Welcome to Daily Variety, your daily dose of news and analysis for entertainment industry insiders. It's Wednesday, September 23rd, 2025. I'm your host, Cynthia Littleton. I am co-editor-in-chief of Variety alongside Ramin Satuda. I'm in LA, he's in New York, and Variety has reporters around the world covering the business of entertainment. In today's episode, we'll hear from Variety chief film critic Owen Gleiberman on the new Paul Thomas Anderson drama, One Battle at a Time. Owen explains why he thinks it's a film for our times. And we'll hear from Jem Aswad, Variety's music maestro. He reflects on the retirement of Sylvia Rhone, the veteran label executive who has been a pioneer in so many ways. But before we get to that, here are a few headlines just in this morning that you need to know. By now, most people know that Jimmy Kimmel is back on ABC tonight. Nexstar and Sinclair stations are still going to preempt the show. That will hurt his ratings in key markets. Kimmel typically brings in about 1.8 million to 2 million viewers a night. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that tonight's number will be closer to 4 million, even with significant station losses. Speaking of ratings, Nielsen's monthly media distributor gauge is out this morning. It measures share of viewing among big platforms. For the month of August, YouTube was still on top in the United States with 13.1% of total viewing. Disney is number 2 with 9.7%, and Netflix was number 3 at 8.7%. People are talking about Rachel Maddow's interview on Monday night with Kamala Harris about Harris's new memoir, 107 Days. Variety's Dan D'Addario, in a column that posted last night, called the sit-down, quote, gooily sympathetic, end quote. All of those stories and so much more can be found on Variety.com right now. Now we turn to conversations with Variety journalists about news and trends in show business. There's a big, ambitious, new adult drama coming to the multiplexes this weekend. It's called One Battle After Another. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Teyana Taylor, and it is very much a film for this fraught moment in America. Owen explains why that is and why it works so well. Owen Gleiberman, thanks for joining me.
Good to be here, Cynthia.
If there's a movie that people are talking about, I always want to know your perspective. This is absolutely going to be one of the fall's most talked about films. And it's a big swing from Warner Brothers, Leonardo DiCaprio, Paul Thomas Anderson, a lot of firepower in the cast. Start by sort of telling us, set the scene for us on what the story is.
One Battle After Another is a movie set in an authoritarian America that feels in many ways like what this one could be turning into. The film is actually a rather uncanny projection of what it feels like it could be like here in a few years. Not the present day, but it's not a future movie either. It's very much rooted in the here and now. It's about that regime. It's about these revolutionary guerrillas who are up against it and turn out to not have much of a chance to really succeed. And it's also about this kind of strange but absolutely fascinating love triangle between one of the rebel leaders, played by Teyana Taylor, the demolitions expert, played by DiCaprio, that she becomes partners with, and then this uptight, sadistic army colonel, played by Sean Penn, who becomes obsessed with the rebel leader and captures her and sleeps with her and gets her pregnant, and the daughter ends up being raised by DiCaprio. And it's about how that triangle kind of plays out against the backdrop of this very, serious authoritarian.
Mm-hmm. And it is set in America. It is set in a place with 50 states and the trappings of America.
Very much set in America. It is not some wild, phantasmagorical, alternative reality. It's an act of world building where Paul Thomas Anderson has built the world that we're in, but just a heightened version of it. You talk about a movie that people will be talking about, but it would really be hard to think of a film in recent years that hit the zeitgeist jackpot the way that this one does. Paul Thomas Anderson took the Thomas Pynchon novel Vineland and imagined an authoritarian state that looks quite authentically like what this country could be heading toward.
What do you think Paul Thomas Anderson was trying to say with this movie?
There is something almost karmic about the timing of it. When he completed this film, Donald Trump had not taken office yet. So he wasn't predicting that that was going to happen. But I think he really wanted to take the temperature of where America is right now. And I think this is the kind of movie that people are going to be flocking to and talking about as something that really matters in a way that's very rare now in the movie landscape. I mean, really, if you were going to think of examples, you'd have to go back to something like All the President's Men or Network, something like that. When Civil War came out last year, that A24 movie, that was sort of the toy version of this. It felt very abstract. It hadn't really been thought through. I didn't think it really seemed to capture the dueling factions in America. It didn't feel that deep. This movie is really an immersion in what's happening now. All you have to do is listen to some of the Charlie Kirk funeral to see that this is a portrayal of something that really is going on in the country right now. And I think that people are going to watch it with a real hush of recognition. I also think that the movie is almost coming out at the perfect week, to be honest with you, because I do think there is this feeling that the Jimmy Kimmel story is an inflection point in our country, and in a rather ironic way. Namely, it just seems that a lot of Americans have basically said during the Trump presidency so far, we don't care that much about the crackdown on law firms and higher education and the fading of NATO and the rounding up of immigrants and the cozying up to Vladimir Putin. But if you start messing with what we want to watch on TV, we are going to have a problem with that. That does seem to be almost the cutting edge of freedom, I think, for Americans. They do not want their entertainment taken away. And that may seem trivial in the grand scheme of things, but I think it's hugely symbolic.
Let me ask you this, Owen Gleiberman, as I sit here in West LA and you sit there in Manhattan, how do you think this is going to play in places far away from where we are, in the Midwest, in the South? Do you think people are going to say, oh, that's Hollywood liberals shaking their fingers at us again?
Well, I think one of the fascinating things about how one battle after another is going to play out is that it is getting the kind of rave reviews that I think really send a movie out there. The critics kind of act together and send a message that tells people, this is such an extraordinary movie that you have to see it. I think that people will listen. And I think they're going to go, and by they, I mean everybody, including, I think, a lot of people from the right. The kinds of people who would normally shun what they see as a liberal movie or maybe a movie like Civil War. This movie feels like such a referendum on what's going on right now. And it isn't so judgmental. For instance, it's clearly anti-authoritarian, but Paul Thomas Anderson, in his incredible filmmaking instinct and humanity, does not hold up the revolutionary guerrillas in this movie in some pious way. He kind of mocks them at times. He shows that they're very naive. And I think there's something inviting about that.
Does it surprise you that Paul Thomas Anderson is the writer-director that is delivering this at this moment?
Well, it surprises me only in the sense that Paul Thomas Anderson takes wild swings that I really respect, goes off in a different direction each time, so he's completely unpredictable. But I am in a rather different camp from almost all critics when it comes to Paul Thomas Anderson, in that I started out as, if I can say this, I considered myself almost the foremost critical champion of Boogie Nights. I just went to bat for that movie. I fell in love with it. I saw it more than 30 times. I felt that it was saying something. I find his movies interesting. They have not bowled me over the way that Boogie Nights did, and Magnolia to a degree. This movie, to me, is his return to form, because he's always had his extraordinary craft as a filmmaker. But I think here he has his full humanity, which is what I think the calling card of those early films were. It is, in the end, about the DiCaprio characters trying to rescue his daughter. It's very moving in that regard. It may connect in a new way for Paul Thomas Anderson, and certainly connects for me in a way that his films haven't in a long time.
Owen, I am glad that in your estimation, Paul Thomas Anderson has his boogie back on. You've done your job because I cannot wait to see this movie.
And it's exciting to be reminded that movies can still really matter.
Now we'll hear from Jem Aswad on the incredible career of Sylvia Rhone. Rhone started as a secretary in the 1970s at Buddha Records. She steps down after decades of leading some of the biggest music companies in the world. Jem Aswad, Variety's head of music, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me as always, Cynthia.
Big news in the music world. In the label management world, Sylvia Rhone is a name that has been in Variety's pages for more than 40 years. She has been a force in the music industry for decades across multiple label groups. She's truly one of the most influential executives, and she happens to be a Black woman, and she was a Black woman rising through the ranks and leading organizations, big organizations, at a time when you just did not see that. So the news of her resignation that was released today it signifies a big passing, not just for the music industry, but for the entertainment industry at large, because she is such a well-known figure. Jem, what was your first thought when this news came into your inbox?
The first thought was that it was a surprise, but not necessarily a shock. Sylvia is 73 years old. She started in the 1970s as an assistant at Buddha Records, where the flagship artist was Gladys Knight and the Pips. She was the only Black woman at the head of a major label, and I don't mean subsidiaries, I mean a major label. And you don't see much of that these days anymore either, let alone women at the tops of these labels. It's a very disturbing trend in the music industry that women CEOs, women presidents are being replaced by men. Now, there has been no replacement named at Epic Records yet. In the meantime, it will be run by Zeke Lewis, who is the president, and Rick Sackheim, who's the general manager. And I think they're going to take their time to find the right person to do it, because the company, it's running quite well with artists like Travis Scott and Zara Larson and Tyla and Madison Beer and Meghan Trainor and 21 Savage and people like that. Future as well.
And Jem, remind us, her first CEO post, that was at Elektra Records, was that right?
That's where she was first named CEO, but she had been at Atlantic Records, which was an affiliated label. They were both Warner labels and still are. But she was senior vice president of Black music. And she worked with everyone from Roberta Flack and Donny Hathaway to Brandy to Das FX. Her big breakthrough artist in 1993-94 was En Vogue. Free Your Mind and the Rest Will Follow, lots of hits like that. That was really her signature artist. And she was also, I'm not going to lie, she was feared especially in the 90s. And, that toughness really did serve her well as a business person.
It was her group that had red hot rapper Travis Scott do a deal with Fortnite to be in that virtual reality video game, and that it just seems like she's got that see around corners quality that is really important in CEOs. Looking over her bio, she took the helm of Motown Records in the late 1990s, and of course Motown, a storied label, it's literally synonymous with a particular type of music, a particularly American type of pop and R&B. But at the time she took it over, Berry Gordy had left. It was long past the glory days that established Motown. It was a difficult time for the music business in general. The words Napster was on everybody's lips, and all kinds of craziness ensued. What impact did she have on Motown at that time?
Multiple significant artists came out of it when she took over, and she did manage to invigorate it. She brought in some very strong young executives and a lot of very strong young artists as well. I don't think she did the deal directly herself, but they dealt directly with Cash Money Records, which had such enormous artists as Lil Wayne and Nicki Minaj and Drake a little bit later. Under her own umbrella, there was Erykah Badu, Kid Cudi, Akon, Nelly.
Let's hope right now that there is an assistant somewhere working really hard at a startup music label that is going to grow up to be the next Sylvia Rhone.
And not for nothing, she was a CEO at all three major label groups, at Warner, at Universal, and at Sony. And very few people can say that.
She's the Fred Silverman of the music business. TV lovers will get that one. Let's give Sylvia Rhone the last word in this segment. Here's a clip from her 2016 interview with Dee Poku of the UK's WIE suite.
I've been in the business almost 40 years, and my successes and my growth have always been based on my performance. So, and in the music business, you're only as good as your last 3 minutes and 20 seconds. So you're always feeling that pressure. And I was able to go from Atlantic and start a new label called East West Records that I had given a proposal to the chairman of Atlantic. And in the first year, we lost $15 million, and in the second year, we made $150 million. So that kind of set me up for the next big promotion, which was to be chairman of Elektra Records. And that was probably my most productive as well as exciting time in the business.
As we close out today's episode, here's a few things we're watching for. Variety's Power of Women Los Angeles is set for October 29th. Jamie Lee Curtis, Kate Hudson, Nicole Scherzinger, Sydney Sweeney, and Wanda Sykes are this year's honorees. Much more to come on this, and we are really looking forward to it. Variety just wrapped up our coverage of the Busan Film Festival in South Korea. Now we're off to San Sebastian in Spain to produce digital dailies at that festival through the end of this week. Before we go, congrats to Sofia Coppola. The writer-director will be honored by the Museum of Modern Art at its 2025 film benefit, and that is set for November 12th. Thanks for listening. This episode was written and reported by me, Cynthia Littleton, with contributions from Owen Gleiberman and Jem Aswad. Stick, Snicks, Hick, Picks. Please leave us a review at the podcast platform of your choice, and please tune in tomorrow for another episode of Daily Variety.